We are back, and it is time for my favorite color is Moda. I'm so excited. Today is February the 8th, 2021, and this is part 2 of session 1. How did we say that?
Episode 1,
Episode
part 2.
1, part 2, whatever. So anyway, I jumped into it so fast last week that I just forgot some of the real basics that I wanted to talk to you about. First of all, you should always clean your sewing machine before you start, or every bobbin. I clean mine every bobbin, but some people don't clean it that often. But people forget to clean their irons. So today I'm going to talk to you about that. I have an old scruffy, just a 59-cent craft paintbrush here. And where the iron gets really, really dusty is right here, in between. Now, don't use a synthetic. If you've got this on and it's hot, don't use a synthetic brush. This is a natural. I think these are pig hairs. But anyway, use a natural fiber brush and just get in there and clean that out. Now, I cleaned this one last week before you got here. And then this week I cleaned it again, and that's what I got. So not too much, but now I know that's not going to end up on my fabric. Look at that. How nasty. You don't want that on your fabric, right? So before you get started, before I even turn my iron on, I clean my iron. That's a really good tip, okay? So do that. Then, as I went home and took the rest of the fabric to cut it up into my strips, I came to fabric 5 and realized my ruler is only 8.5 inches. Now that's the biggest increment that this 24.5-inch ruler comes in, 8.5. It comes in 6.5. I think it comes in 3.5, but 8.5 is as big as it comes. So my first strip is bigger than 8.5. It's actually 10.5. So what am I to do? Oh, no. Should I use the lines on my mat? Well, I could, but I'm not a mat line user, okay? Because I think it slips and slides too much. I like what I'm cutting to be underneath my ruler so that it has real stability, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up another ruler, okay? Well, any ruler will do, okay? Any ruler will do. So my ruler is 8.5, and I need to cut 10.5. Now you got to do some math, but it's first grade math. It is 10.5 minus 8.5 is 2 inches, right? Peter, am I right?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Okay, now last time you couldn't hear Peter, a word he was saying, because we had this microphone. We were trying to be real techy, and
if it's cookies, I can do cookie math. So
if you
cookie
say,
math.
Okay.
Yeah, if you say 10.5 cookies and you take 2 cookies away, what do you have?
We have to start talking in cookies instead of inches. Okay, well, anyway, getting back to this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to straighten my edge. But then I thought last time, I walked around. What if you can't walk around? This is what I'm going to do. Instead of walking around, I'm going to teach you this little trick. Okay, I'm going to put my ruler, I'm going to line it up with my line. Make sure it's lined up down here, square, nice and square, and then I know that my ruler is on there straight. My fabric may not be straight, but I know my ruler is straight, and I know that the fabric is laying straight because this line is perfectly straight with the fabric and this line. Now, I've got the fold against my belly here, and one of the biggest mistakes you can make is if you have a belly like mine anyway, is having your ruler over the edge of your table. Look at that. Peter, see what I mean?
Why is that bad?
Okay, I'm going to show you. Okay? Now just stay right there. When I get up to cut, look what my belly does. It moves the ruler. Uh-oh. So then you're screwed up because, now your ruler is moved and you haven't even realized it because your belly did it. So make sure that your ruler is not off the table, that it is on the table, okay? And then I'm going to add, instead of adding 2 inches, I'm going to add 2.5 inches because my fabric's not straight here on this edge. So I've got this lined up. I know it's all lined up. Pretty snazzy. I'm going to take this. I'm even going to go over a little bit so that I know that I have at least 10 inches here because I've got 8.5 inches here and I've got 2.5 inches here. So that is 8.5, 9, 10, 11. That's 11 inches. Gonna get my rotary cutter. I'm going to unlock it and I'm going to cut. Now I know this is going to be really straight. Now, when I hold my rotary cutter, we didn't talk about this last week either. I hold my rotary cutter so the blade is right up next to the ruler. And I'm not this way, and I'm not this way. I am perfectly straight up and down. And I've got my finger right here with, this is where my pressure comes from to cut. So I'm going to cut, and this is my pressure right here on this finger. And I should walk my finger down, but I didn't. But I kept it pretty straight. Okay, now I know this is my straight edge. I'm going to fold that. I'm going to spin that around. I'm going to fold that. And now this is my straight edge. So I know I need to add 2 inches to my 8.5 inch ruler. So look at that. I'm going to lay that perfectly straight on the 2 inches. And now I have added 2 inches to my 8.5 inch ruler. I've got 10.5. I'm cutting this off. This was my uneven edge. Throw that in the waste. And now I have my 10.5 inch strip. See that? Pretty snazzy, right? So since I didn't cut this because I wanted to show you that, I'm going to have to go in and cut the rest of my strips from fabric 5. Now, fabric 5 for you may not be this color. It may be a different color, but, you know, we've been making our little chart, right? See how number 5 is missing? Because I haven't cut it yet. So here I'm getting ready to cut my number 5 fabric, and I've got my little line keeper here so my eye goes right to what I need to cut. And I'm laying these in order, biggest to the bottom. I want to talk a little bit about these instructions in this book. My friend Michelle White from Moda, she's the one who wrote these instructions. It just so happens that her brain and my brain think the same way when we cut out a quilt. Not all instructions are these fantastic as these are. This starts with the largest piece. You cut your strips first, then you go in and subcut. Other patterns don't do it that way. So before I even cut out a quilt that's not written this way, I will go in, I will read all the instructions, and I will make little notes in my notebook. I always have a little notebook with me, and I'm always taking notes and drawing diagrams and doing things. Anytime I'm making a quilt, I will stop, read the instructions, and I will figure out the biggest piece I need to cut. I will cut a strip, and then I will subcut until that strip is gone. And then I'll cut another one, the next size I need, and I will subcut out of that until all that is gone. And so that's the way I cut out a quilt. And these instructions, there's not a flaw in them. I have cut this quilt out twice now, and I can't find any mistakes in this. It is laid out exactly like I would do every quilt that I've ever done. So, let's go to the next cut. And again, I'm making sure that this is not off the table because I don't want my belly moving my ruler. Now see, this is what I get for not moving my hand with my ruler. I'm off a little bit. So I'm going to do it this time. See what I mean? I'm going to stabilize that down there. So now I was off a little bit, so I'm going to bring this back together. Making sure those edges, look how much I was off. Because I didn't move my hand down, my ruler slipped a little bit.
That's a good 1/4 inch.
Yeah. So see how bad it would have been when I got to sewing? That would have been really bad.
It would have been a My Favorite Shape is Wonky quilt.
Yeah. My favorite shape of quilt. Yeah. To go along with my favorite color. So there we go. So from now on, I'm going to walk my hand down my ruler or use my fancy smancy little weight here. Okay. See, now because I walked that down perfectly straight. Take the time to do that. Everybody should have their kit by now. If you missed out on getting a kit, we still have some. And if you're afraid that you're going to miscut.
We sold one Saturday.
We did?
We had a quilter that wanted to start quilting, and she was asking, well, what's a good quilt to do? And
Brand new quilter, you mean?
somebody, brand new.
Awesome.
And so I told her about how you're doing the free videos and how they're going to learn a lot of tips from, somebody with over 20 years experience. And I came and showed her all the blocks and the different colorways. And because you had all the colorways laid out, it was really easy for her to decide what colorway she wanted to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Well,
She is so happy and so excited to get
Good.
started.
There's another new quilter that's been watching my videos. Her name is Elizabeth. She just happens to be one of our employees' cats. And Elizabeth, hello. Hello, Elizabeth. Don't bother your mommy while she's trying to sew. Just watch my video. So anyway, Pam said that when she was cutting out her quilt the other day, that Elizabeth just was sitting and watching me the whole time and wasn't paying one bit of attention
Now,
to her.
I hear that there's a kangaroo in the room.
Oh yeah.
Don't we have a kangaroo watching the video?
Yeah, that's because my cabinet is a kangaroo cabinet. I'll talk to you more about that when I start to sew with my machine. Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna get these other two pieces cut. Okay, now I want to talk to you a little bit about the controversial, no, it's not politics, don't worry. Controversial, do you pre-wash or do you not pre-wash? Everybody has their own opinion, and everybody does it their own way, and that's all good. All right? I do not pre-wash. I buy all my fabric at a quilt shop that is reliable, that has a quilt shop fabric that is based with a very good gray goods and then dyed with very good stable dyes. Way back, the dyes weren't as stable as they are now. And so you get a lot of bleeding, a lot of fading, a lot of color movement out of your fabrics because the dyes would come loose in the water. So today we don't have as much problem, but if you're not buying your fabric from a reputable quilt shop, you might need to wash your fabric before you start to get the dyes that are loose out. Now, if I'm going to wash fabric for quilting, which I don't, but when I wash my quilt, I use this Shouts color catcher. Shouts is not paying me any money. Now, Shouts, if you want to pay me some money to promote your product, that'd be all right with me, but right now, they're not. They haven't contacted me. But these color catchers, you get them with the laundry detergents, okay? And what you do is you put one of these or two of these in your wash machine, and as the water gets filled with color, then it catches it onto this and doesn't let it get onto any other fabrics. But when you do wash, you want to wash like colors together. Don't put a red in with a white. It's just like your clothes, you know. And if you got new clothes, these are good to put in with your new clothes if you're afraid they're going to fade or the color's going to let loose. Color catchers. Can you get a close-up of that? So if you want to take a screenshot of that, and of course the directions are on the back. So, I don't pre-wash my fabric. You can pre-wash your fabric. If you do pre-wash your fabric, then it's going to shrink. If you buy a kit and the kit has specific sizes, specific yardage, you may not have enough fabric when you go to cut. Okay, so you got to be aware of that you may want to buy. I had a lady call me Friday. We talked about it. She wanted to wash all her fabrics. I said, that's good. If she wanted to make sure she had enough, she might want to come in and buy 1/3 of a yard more. Oh my gosh, 1/3 of a yard. It doesn't shrink 1/3 of a yard. It does not shrink 1/3 of a yard. You're right. But she's going to wash the big yardage. She's going to wash the little yardage. Okay? So by washing both, and you don't know how much you're going to get when you're left, and the cutting measurements are very specific, she wanted to make sure that she had enough. So I said 1/3 of a yard would probably be her best bet. Now, when you're washing fabric, fabric only shrinks one way if it's good fabric. Now, if it's lower quality fabric, it will shrink both ways. But high quality fabric only shrinks one way. And it can shrink anywhere between 2% and 20%. But it only shrinks from salvage to salvage. So the width is what's shrinking. The length, the part that you buy, the yardage part, it doesn't shrink that way. It only shrinks from salvage to salvage. So this is what's shrinking in. So you will find that you'll get enough strips out, but maybe when you're cutting the subcuts, you won't have enough because it's not going to be your 42 inches or 44 inches that you thought you were getting, okay? So keep that in mind as you're doing that. Then the next big controversial, can you guess what that is, Peter? Starch or no starch? Do you starch your fabric, Peter? No, Peter is shaking his marbles. No, he does not starch. There are so many videos out there about starching your fabric. I do not starch my fabric. People feel like with the fabric not being as limpy, that you can get more precise piecing. I don't have a problem with precise piecing, so why would I go to all that extra expense and trouble to starch my fabric? I wouldn't. That's just silly. So I'm going to not starch my fabric, but if you feel more comfortable, you need to do it, okay? You got to do what makes you comfortable. Do what makes it fun for you. If you get better results with starched fabric, pre-washed fabric, la-di-da-di-da, on and on, you got to do it. You got to do it the way you want to do it. So no wrong or right there. This is my leftover, so I'm going to put it over here in my leftover bucket. Oh, before I do that, now Peter almost let me forget. Everything that I do wrong, I blame on Peter because my dogs aren't here. Usually the dogs are the ones that are getting blamed.
What do we got to do?
I got to cut my 1.5 inch piece out, remember?
Number 5.
Number 5. So got my little ruler out. Get me a 1.5 inch square.
Oh, where's the
where'd it
glue
go?
stick?
Oh, right here. Nope, I know where the glue stick is because it's over here by my little gadgety thing. Now, you know I got purple glue. It's no problem. It'll dry clear. Put that on there. And get my marker out. And this is number 5. Yay! So now my chart is complete. I'm going to keep it here with my book so that I can remember what's what. And I'm going to start cutting my fabric. Now again, I have kept my fabric. I've kept my fabric in numerical order. So this is number 4 right here. Now I got to slip number 5 in there. Okay, there we go. So now.
So I noticed that one of them had the colors pinned to the fabric.
No, it's just laying there from where I took it off the salvage when I got my kit.
Would you recommend, if you know there's going to be some time that lapses to pin maybe one of the colors on there, or no, you don't have
No,
to
I
because
don't
you got
have
the
to because I've
swatch.
made my swatchy swatch.
Where did you get that?
I made it myself.
Did it come with the kit?
It did come with the kit. You mean the paper part? Yeah, it came with the kit when you buy it here at Always in Stitches.
We love our quilters.
We do, don't we? Okay, so now here's fabric 1 because my chart tells me it's fabric 1. I'm going to go to my book here. I'm going to find fabric 1. I love this little book. Okay, fabric 1, here it is. Now this time, instead of putting my line that way so I can see the numbers that way, I'm going to put it this way. So I can only see what I'm supposed to cut out of that strip. Now see, that is just the bee's knees right there.
The snake's hips.
Snake's hips. Do
Yeah.
snakes have hips?
I don't know, but it's the same.
It's the same. Bees have knees. All right. I love this little gadgety thing here that you can just keep all your rulers on. Okay? Now again, yeah, isn't that neat?
That's super cool.
Yeah, and it's got a place for your, you lock this, and then it's got a place for your rotary cutter and everything.
And seam ripper.
Yeah, everything, you know, and I even have my paintbrush in there. You can put your seam ripper in there. You can do all kinds you can keep all kinds of things in there. So anyway, it's a place for my rulers. I'm going to turn this over so that I have the biggest piece on the top. Fabric 1, I'm here at fabric 1, and it tells me that I need to cut 2 squares. So I'm going to cut off my salvage. Now here we go. Again, I don't have my ruler hanging off so that my belly doesn't hit it. See that? And I'm going to cut my salvage off. And I'll leave about, see all these little dots? About a ½ inch beyond those little dots.
Oh, I thought you were supposed to cut on the dotted line.
No, 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 no.
Uh-oh.
No, don't cut on the dotted line because
I've been doing it wrong all these years.
if you do that, you don't give enough room for the fabric to relax. See, it's really tightly woven up until about a ½ inch away. Now my fabric can relax. It's got the salvage off of it and it can relax. So I'm going to cut, on my instructions it tells me right here, I'm going to cut 2 squares. So I'm using my big ruler here. I'm going to make sure that it's square. Now, if you wanted to use a square ruler, you could, but you'd be back and forth, back and forth. So I'm just going to use my long ruler, and I need to cut 2. Well, because my fabric was folded, look what I got. 2. Okay. Now, inside the block is a number. This just happens to be 18. Both of these are 18. What does that mean? Oh my goodness, if you bought your kit from us, you got some paper bags. What I want you to do is I want you to take those paper bags and I want you to take your marker and I want you to number them 1 through 20. 1 through 20. And every time you subcut, you're going to look at that number. This one's 18. I got a little pouch here for them. I mean, a little container. I'm going to find number 18. There she is, number 18. And that is for my block 18. Isn't that something? Now, a lot of people are using those Ziploc bags, and they're fine too, but I find them slimy. You know, they slime around, they slip around. You can't keep control of them. That's why I like that's why I like the paper bags, because they just stay put. Okay? So that was 18. Yay! I'm getting so organized. I can't hardly stand myself. Okay. Same strip. I'm going to cut. The next thing is, it tells me down here, make a subcut, what it tells me. I'm not telling you what it tells me because you got to buy the book. That's what Moda says anyway. Okay, it says to subcut that. I did that wrong because I forgot I had double layers on underneath me. So I should have only really cut one of these because I only need 4 of these. I need 4 of these, so I'm just subcutting these. And again, the number is 18. Find my 18 bag, open her up, slip them down in there. By the time I get done cutting my whole book, all of my sacks will be full of exactly what I need for that block. That's sort of like your little grocery list. You know, you go in, you get a recipe, you put down what you need, and you gather all the stuff, and when you get home, you've got all the stuff sitting on the counter that you need. And then if you're really professional like those people on TV, you get all these little bowls, and you measure everything out, and then you're all set for when you're ready to cook. You can just dump it in. Well, that's kind of the same thing. I'm cutting it all, I'm putting it in my little bags, and when I need to make block 1, I just take my bag, all my components for block 1 is right here, sit down at my sewing table, and I got everything cut out. It is super awesome.
I'm going to start calling you the mise en place quilter.
Why is that?
Well, mise en place is everything in its place.
Really?
When you cook, it's called the mise en place. You get everything in its place in little dishes.
Oh, really? Who knew?
You're the mise en place quilter.
I'm the mise en place. Okay, now I need to cut 1 square, so I'm going to open my fabric up. So I don't need to cut 2, I need to cut 1. You know, you always check it twice and cut once. Now, I'm cutting, this is not supposed to be the full width of my strip. So I have to cut in here and I have to cut it twice. Now, had I taken my ruler, had I taken this ruler and put it on the measurement like this, I could have cut it both at one time, okay? So, if you want to use a square ruler, I recommend a 12.5-inch square ruler. And the reason being is because most blocks square up to 12.5. Now, not on this one. This is very untraditional. But if you're doing a lot of traditional block piecing, 12.5 is just kind of the magic number. I don't know why. But I always recommend that my customers or my students get the 8.5 by 24.5 and a 12.5-inch square. So I'm going to open up my brand new 12.5-inch square. I got to pay for this. Don't want to forget to pay for that, Peter. Okay? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my marker. What can I do? I could not quilt without this magic marker. I'm just telling you right now. And down here, there's a little...
What kind of magic does it do?
Well, it's magic because it's permanent, fine point permanent marker. And I'm going to write my initials right there. Okay? So that I know that that's my ruler. So that if you have a 12.5-inch ruler and I have a 12.5-inch ruler and we end up both in the same class or we go to a retreat, we'll know whose ruler is whose, right? Okay. So anyway, this... I'm going to put this ruler away for right now. And the reason I kept it out is because I wanted to show you. It's so new, it's sticking to the fabric.
Static cling.
Static cling. Okay, now what I can see with my square ruler, come up here close, Peter, is these lines are awesome. They really work for me. See, this is 6.5. I go down and that is 6.5. And so I know when I cut this off, I have a perfect 6.5. Now, where does it go? It goes in number 7. Let me find bag 7. Excuse me. How big of a piece do you save when you have a little strip?
1.5.
1.5. Peter likes to save 1.5. If it's an inch, I'll save it because I like to do miniatures. But most people, 1.5 inches, that's their limit. So if it's less than 1.5 inches, it just goes over here in the waste basket. So the next ones, remember these that I cut out and I was wrong? Well, it just so happens that the next set of pieces I need to cut, this will work. I get it straight on my ruler. I do not use the lines on my mat. Why? Because I don't feel like I can get as accurate a cut because everything that I'm cutting, my piece that I'm cutting, is under my ruler. I know it's stable. So when I put my hand there, it's not going to move. And I actually need 3 of these, so I'm going to have to cut another one from over here. I'm going to bring my ruler down. It is, I'm going to get the width and the length. I'm going to sit it on there. And now, instead of making 2 separate cuts, because I'm using my square ruler, look what I get. I can cut it all at once.
Boom.
Okay? Boom. Now that needs to be pressed. Boy, I watched some videos today about starching. People have 150 ways how they starch their fabrics. Some of them saturate it. Some of them just spray it a little bit. YouTube, very educational. Very educational. Okay. So that is all of number 7. Number 7. Okay, the next one I'm going to go to out of strip number 2. I find that these are not my measurements. I thought those were my measurements up there, so I'm going to switch my little stripper thing down here so my eye goes right to there, okay? So I need to cut 6 of these next measurements, 6 of these next squares. And it just so happens that I have 2 strips cut. If I lay one on top of the other, I now have 4 layers. I'm comfortable cutting 4 layers. If you're not, by all means, don't do it. I'm going to remove my salvage first. See, now my ruler was hanging off. Did you see that? And it got caught on my sleeve.
I didn't see it, but I heard it.
And it got caught on my sleeve. That's why you just do not have that hanging over. Put my hand down, cut off my salvage. Move my ruler. I've got 4 layers under me, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. So I'm going to cut 4 at once. And then I'm going to move this so I only have 1 layer. Got it all. See, you want to take your time. You don't want to hurry this. Now, a lot of people don't like cutting out. Peter, he does not like cutting out his quilts. If he could pay to have somebody cut out his quilts, he would. But he doesn't like it. I love it. I
Oh.
love cutting out the quilt.
Hopefully I'll love it after this video series, and then
Hopefully you would.
I'll learn all the tips and tricks.
Now this goes in bag 1 because it's for block number 1. Just going to write down in there, bag number 1. And then I've got to go back and I've got to cut another one of those for 7. And I'm just going to use that little scrap I had left over. Because why not? It was right there. I don't need to cut off this big piece. If I have a piece from the other piece that's good enough. I'm going to press this first. Uh-oh. A little spritz of water there from my steam. This ruler is full of static, but I like it because it's really holding down on my fabric there. Okay, now that's going to go in number 7. Now this seems like it's just going to take extra time, but when you start to making your blocks, it's going to be worth it. Next thing I need from this strip is another one of those squares. So, square that up right on my ruler. Goes back into number 1. Next strip. One, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take and I'm going to get 4 layers under me. 1, 2. Oh, I'm going to press that. How do you like our little sewing room here? See how nice it is? It's got the irons right here by the cutting, the iron, the little sewing machine there. I'm finding that I love the way this is set up. Of course, I should because I set it up. And it's set up just like my area at home is set up. Okay, now I've got 4 layers under me, and I need to cut 4 of these squares. I'm going to move my fabric up so that my belly doesn't get in the way of my... And I'm going to move it down because the squares I need are not as wide, okay? This is a 7-inch wide, and I need squares that are shorter than that. So I'm just going to cut that, and then I'm going to cut this. And voila, I have 4 squares of what I needed. And it goes in, 2 of them go in 6, and 2 of them go in 16. You know what? To save time, I'm going to do that at home. I'm just going to save those over there. The next thing I need is 1. Now look at here, Peter. This is not straight because, you know, I had my ruler like this, and when I cut like that, it just kind of went like that. So I need to straighten that edge, or I can come over here and use this edge. Did you see that? I did?
I did.
So I want to come up, well, now that edge is not even either.
Uh-uh.
So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to even that edge up. So I'm going to lay my ruler down.
Why is it so important to be meticulous during the cutting process?
Well, that is an excellent question. There are 3 components to piecing a quilt. And if one thing goes wrong in one of those components, it messes the whole thing up. So you've got cutting. If your cutting is not accurate, your quilt's not going to be accurate, okay? If you're pressing and you're not pressing accurately, then your quilt's not going to be, it's not going to be accurate. And when you're sewing a 1/4 inch, if your 1/4 inch is inaccurate, your quilt piecing is not going to be accurate. So those 3 things are the most important things when you're piecing your quilt top. Cutting accurately, pressing properly, 1/4 inch exact. Or some people like to use a scant 1/4 inch. Now I don't use a scant 1/4 inch because I don't press towards the dark. I press open. Okay, so I don't need to do that. So now I've got a straight edge again. And I'm going to cut this block that I need. And this is how that straight edge didn't happen, because the next block that I'm going to cut is shorter than my strip. Okay, so I could go like that and like that. And when I cut all that off like that, that's where I get messed up. But it just takes a second to straighten that back up. So I'm not going to worry about that. This goes in, well, I'm not going to worry about that. Remember I said I wasn't going to worry about that?
We'll file it away later.
File it away later. Okay, so now this is what I have left over. I'm not going to keep that. That's too little. This is exactly 1 inch. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep this. That's all my little scraps. Now I'm going to go to the next strip. I'm going to open it up. Now, look at my strip, Peter. I'm going to get a drink. My strip is perfectly straight. Remember last week when we talked about straightening the edge of your fabric and getting your fabric straight from the very beginning, and we moved the salvages back and forth until it laid perfectly flat? I'm going to show you what happens when you don't do that, okay? Can you see that that's not straight? Okay, but I'm going to force it. I'm going to force it to be straight. Now, how do I know it's not straight? Well, look at this. If this edge is straight and down here it's not straight, well, it looks pretty straight, doesn't it? How'd that happen? Oh, it would be this way. Never mind. Duh. It'd be this piece right here. I didn't do it right. Oh, yeah. Okay, there. Look. See, it's not level. It's not straight. It was my fold. See, look, it's on my fold straight. This is how my fabric was. This is the fold. There's the salvage out there. Well, let's just put it that way. Okay, this is the fold. There's the salvage. Get my big ruler back. Put this on the straight edge. Now look at how off it is. It's not much, but it's off. See that? I'm going to straighten the edge. And now I'm going to cut a strip. Now look what I get when I open it up. Well, I didn't exaggerate it enough, but that's not straight along there. It's got what we call a dog leg. Oh, there, that one's more. It has more of a dog leg. See how these pieces like bow out? Let me lay my ruler down there. See, look. See how they don't line up? They're not straight. That's called a dog leg. Sometimes it's really more, if you don't get it straight, it's more apparent. But that's what you get when you don't straighten up your edge. You get what they call a dog leg. You know how a dog leg has a little bend in it? That's how that got that name. Okay, we're going to take a break for a minute. I'm going to rest and get a drink of water, and then we'll be right back, okay?
Action.
Okay, we're back. Had to take a little break. I was getting kind of fainty. Forgot to eat breakfast this morning because I was so excited to get here and finish to cut out the quilt. So had to take a break. Ate some snacks. Trail mix. What's your favorite snack when you're quilting? Write it in the comments down below, okay? Speaking of the comments down below, there's a little gray arrow. I'm sure if you've watched YouTube long enough, you know that you can push that little button and down will come some information for you. That information is how you can order stuff that you see me using online, or it's the phone number to the shop or the address to the shop or the place where you can go to see our website. And there's also a disclaimer there that tells you that I'm not the know-it-all that I think I am, and that I am just sharing with you what I do. So, take it or leave it, that's fine. And we're going to continue cutting. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my cutting surface. It's just a regular 4-foot table. One of them heavy-duty ones, because those plastic ones, those white plastic ones, they give in the middle. So when you're putting pressure on them, don't use one of those. Get you something really good and sturdy. And then to raise it up, can you scan down there, Peter, to see what I did? I used those bed risers. You can get them practically anywhere. And I had to use 2 because it wasn't high enough with just 1, okay? You want your cutting table to kind of hit you just where your arms bend. When you lay your arms on your cutting surface, that it just should be a natural bend. Okay, you don't want to be up here. You don't want to be leaning over. You want it to just be where you can stand up straight and get a nice cut, all right? So just a few little hints on a cutting surface. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but if you want something fancy to match all your other stuff that's so pretty, then we do sell cutting tables. You better believe it. Let's get back to cutting our quilt out here. Okay, the next thing I need, and I need 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, and I just happen to have 4 pieces of fabric, 4 layers under me. And what size are those? Those are, okay. Oh, almost forgot to take off my salvage edge. Salvage in the trash. I was using my square ruler. And just so happens that these squares that I need are exactly the size of my ruler. Look what I've done. I've hanged over again, so I better get that back up there so my belly doesn't interfere with my cutting procedures. Even if you're skinny, you still have the potential, Even if you're real flat right here, which you can see I'm not real flat anywhere. So, but even if you're flat, you can bump that up against there, and you just don't want that. So I'm going to cut 4 of these. I'm going to make sure that I've got the right size. And those all go in block 20. Well, I'm going to do that when I get home. Remember I said that. I forgot. Okay, and then the next thing I need is 4. Move this down. Okay, 4 of the next measurements. Making sure that I'm right, and I am, and it's not as wide as my block, as my strip. So I'm going to use my square, and I'm going to cut, and those go in block 17. So I'll do that when I get home. Now, I want you to come up here, Peter, up to my book, and I want to show you something. This next cut that I'm going to make, do you see this dotted line on the diagram?
Uh-huh.
That means that all those go in number 6. Okay, they're all the same size, and they all go
Oh,
in
you
the
don't
same.
cut them in half?
No, you do not. That's why I'm
That's
showing
what
you.
I would have done.
Yeah, see, you would think that that one should have cut it in half. It does not. It just simply means that all those are going in number 6 block. Okay, so don't make that mistake that you think that you're going to be cutting those in half, because you're not. So the next strip, I'm going to have that left over from that strip. Going to go to the next strip, and I'm going to cut 12. Woohoo! 12 of these. So look what I'm going to do. Instead of cutting and getting, if I cut right there where my salvage is, let me turn it over here. If I cut a 1/2 inch within my salvage and I left that folded, I would have been cutting off 1 inch because this is a fold right here. I don't want to waste 1 inch of fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my fold so that it's just right at where I'm going to cut, to straighten my edge, to cut off my salvage. And I'm just going to move that right where the fold is. And when I cut that, I haven't wasted a big bunch of fabric. See that? Yay! So now I've got my thing folded underneath me here. And I've got 4 layers of fabric, and I need 12 of this size. So back to my math. If I've got 4 layers, there's 4. Four plus 4, 8. And in 3 cuts, because I have 4 layers of fabric underneath me, in 3 cuts, I got all 12 of those blocks. See that? And then I'm going to save that because that's over 1 inch. And these are going to go in block 6. Okay. Eight of them are going to go in block 6. 4 of them are going to go into block 17. So you want to make sure that you read the fine line, the fine print, okay? It says right there, you're going to cut 12 of them. 8 of them are for block 6. 4 of them are for block 17. And then when you come in here, just like we showed you before, come here, please. I don't mean to boss Peter around. It's just that, you know, there's all of those 6, and then there's the 4 that go in the 17. And that makes up your 12. Next strip. I need 4 of the first cut. So what am I going to do? What do you think? I'm going to leave that in half so I have 4 layers underneath me. Again, I moved my fold back so that I wouldn't be wasting and cutting off a lot of extra fabric when I get rid of my salvage edge. I just have a little bitty hair left over. Well, that's a big hair, but you get what I mean. That's a horse hair, evidently. Okay, the next thing is just find my width that I need, and in one cut I have all 4 of those cut. Pretty nice, right? Now I need to cut 4 squares. And because I have 4 layers under me, 1 cut, and I've cut all 4 of those. And that's evidently all I needed out of that strip. So look, I've got this left over. Look at all my leftovers. Ooh, I love to make things with my leftovers. I can make me another whole quilt with that. Okay, my next strip, I need to cut 20. 20! And I just so happens I have 3 strips that are the same size. So if I put all 3 strips on, now how many layers do I have underneath me?
6.
6! What I'm going to do is, see it's uneven a little bit, so I'm going to pick it up. I'm just going to tap it.
6 in the mix.
6. If you're not comfortable cutting 6, by all means, don't do it. Okay? Because I've got a new blade
A new ruler.
and a ruler, and it's all straight. Okay, all straight. I'm going to take off my salvage, right? First thing, making sure that it's straight on there. All right, cut off my salvage. 20 squares. How many times does 6 go into 20?
A lot.
Okay, here we've got 6.
You have to do 3 cuts plus 2
Here's we got
squares.
6,
3 cuts and then 2 squares.
and then we got 6 and 6 makes 12.
12 cookies.
12 cookies, Girl Scout cookies. And then we've got 18,
18
and we only need
cookies.
and we only need 20, correct?
Yep.
Let's go back and look. We only need 20, so we only need 2 more. And so I'm going to fold that back, leave that there. So instead of 20 cuts to get 20 blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts, and I've got all 20 of my blocks. Yay! And they all go in the same. Was this part of my stuff? I think it was. Okay. All right, and they all go in the same bag. Okay, now, since I cut off of that last strip, and it's shorter, do you see that? Because I cut off of it. The next cut I need to make, I need 4. And they need to be bigger than my 12 and a half. So I'm going to get this one back out. And look,
What?
I can cut them all 4 at the same time.
That's a big strip.
That's a big strip. I'm going to make sure that it's straight. Is it a whole increment? Nope, it's a half increment.
Oh, I know what block that is.
You do?
Yep.
Which
I
one?
can see it hanging right there. Is that it? Is that the block?
I bet it is. Okay, I've got to open these up. Because with the fold, I don't have enough.
I'm glad you straightened that grain.
Yeah,
That would have been a nightmare.
that would have been a nightmare.
Now I'm going to be sure I straighten the grain of my fabric on my next quilt.
Every time. Okay, there we go. Now I've got 3 layers underneath me. And I need 4 of these. And that one's perfect. Okay, so there you go. Now I'll put those all in the correct bags. Now I have all my leftovers. I'm going to put them over here with my leftovers that I had from when I was cutting. Probably shouldn't have walked away, and you probably didn't hear me, but I was putting my leftovers with my other leftovers. And I'm going to continue through the entire book doing exactly what I just did. If you come to a place in the book that you have a question about, then I want you to put it in the comments and we will absolutely answer any of your questions. Now,
In the private Facebook group or on the YouTube video?
On the YouTube. They
Okay.
can ask questions on the YouTube video. We do have a private Facebook group, but not everybody has access to that. Only
gotcha.
people who have purchased their kit from us. It's going to be more for social stuff. I'm going to get out fabric 5. No, not fabric 5. Yeah, I'm going to get out fabric 5 again. Remember in fabric 5 where I had this big gigantic piece and it's wider than my ruler? Remember that?
Yes.
This is where my 12.5-inch square really steps up. I'm going to get that salvage off of there. Now, could I cut this if I didn't have a big square ruler and I had this and I had some little rulers? Yes, I could. This needs to be 10.5-inch square. So what I could do is even with a little ruler like this is 8.5. I add 2. Remember, it's the same principle as I showed you before. I'm going to lay it this way because I get more coverage. I can get it straighter. Now that is 10.5. See that? But see how much easier it is if you have a 12.5-inch ruler. If you're going to invest in rulers, these are the 2 sizes I suggest. The 12.5, the 8.5 by 24. So now I need to cut this square.
What if I've been quilting and I have the 8.5 and it's a creative grids, and then I know, oh, you know what? That 12-inch I bought one day from somewhere, that Fisker's ruler, it's a Fisker's. Should I use those 2 together, or should I make it worth my while to make sure they both match?
If you had been watching my first video, Peter, you would have known the answer
But
to
some
that.
people will be watching this one for the first time.
Oh, okay. Well, good point. I like that you asked that. I always love it when Peter asks questions, but sometimes I have to give him a little bit of a jab. So, I never cross lines of rulers. Now, that's my own personal thing. I'm kind of compulsive, but I get better results if I stay with the same brand. My particular brand that I like is the Creative Grid ruler. You can see, oh, I've got my name on that one. Here, Creative Grid. And all these rulers right here are Creative Grid. I own every ruler there is in Creative Grid because I used to have a shop. So I could just buy rulers willy-nilly. And I had the money back then because I was making money. Now, well, not so much.
Now you're making quilts.
Oh, no, I'm still making money because I work here at Always in Stitches, and they're very generous. So I'm still making money. That's why I can afford to buy this 12.5-inch ruler. I already have one at home, but I forgot it today, so I had to buy me a new one. So anyway, never can you go wrong with too many rulers. So now I'm just going to lay this down because it's bigger than the square I want. But what is so nice about a square ruler when you have to cut a square is that you can line it up and you know exactly that it is going to be exactly square. And I needed 2 of those. and lickety split because my fabric was folded in half. In one cut I had to. Okay? Then I would just continue on. See, I have all this left over for something else because that's all we needed out of that 10.5-inch strip. But if I had gone ahead and I had cut out all this before I cut out my 10.5, I probably wouldn't have had 10.5 inches left over. So you always want to cut your biggest first. That's the big rule that I'm going to leave you with today. As I said, continue to cut, subcut all your squares. Get them in your bags because next time we see each other, we're going to pick up bag number 1. We're going to go over to our sewing machine and we are going to make block number 1 together. All of our components will be all of our ingredients. What'd you call that word?
Mise en place.
What?
Mise en place.
Mise en place. Is that French?
I think so.
Okay, mise en place. All of our supplies will be in bag 1. That sounds more French or Spanish. Anyway, I'm going to just speak English because I have a hard enough time with that, okay? So we'll see you next time. I'm so excited to get started. If you don't have a kit, we've got some here. If you've pre-washed and you feel like you might want to have some extras, we have it here on the bolt. We have all the fabric held back for this program until we get through with it. Once we are done with the videoing and we pretty much feel like everybody has their fabric and they're all set, we'll put the fabric back out on the floor. But for right now, we have it saved back for you guys. So come in, see what it's all about, see that you might want to participate and have some fun with us. And we'll see you next time. I think this is going to wrap up, session 1.
Episode 1, part
Episode
2.
1. So there's only 2 parts to episode 1. Next week will be episode 2, and we'll start sewing together. See you then. Bye.